So I'm here today with my son Lucas, and about a year and a half ago, Lucas read The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. And he was like, "Hey mom, you really need to read this too." And so that got us talking about some of the issues that I see in the counseling office with young people in Lucas's generation, where they don't really know how to handle their emotions. There's a lack of emotional control. It's kind of led us into some of the cancel culture things and having to have trigger warnings on our social media posts. And so I wanted to kind of interview Lucas. We're going to be a little bit informal, but about some of his thoughts as a young person about the problems that are going on in his generation, as a way to hopefully help him encourage young people, but maybe also give a little bit of feedback towards parents. So this will be the counselor and the counselor's son conversation for you guys today. So Lucas, what are some of the things that first were coming to your mind when you were reading this book and thinking about the emotional lives of your peers?
I think the first thing that comes to mind about that I've noticed my peers being maybe overly emotional about certain things is having perspective of the long term versus the short term. I feel like a lot of my peers are super focused, like in the moment, on something that, in the big picture, is not really that significant or important. So I think having a big picture perspective, having some kind of like, you know, I feel like it's important to have some kind of plan or direction of where you want to be, but also recognize that that plan is going to change. So being able to be flexible to that plan and where you might be led, but having a starting point.
That's really good. So big picture perspective as far as like their own lives and future, but I was thinking also of big picture as far as thinking about other people and like your place in the world. And sometimes our perspective is narrow because we're really self-focused instead of not just long-term for ourselves but outward toward other people.
Yeah, definitely. Like thinking that, you know, so in your perspective, you're um, like everything that's happening is super important to you, right? Whereas to other people, like they don't really care like what you're wearing, or they're not gonna remember what you said if you slipped up or whatever. Like just being able to let those things kind of roll off, and it's
Yeah.
not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's really good because I run into in the counseling office one of the biggest fears that young people seem to have is being embarrassed.
Right.
And so yeah, you're saying like, it happens to everybody.
It happens to
Assume that
everybody.
nobody's gonna
Human.
remember tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because another thing is they also are thinking about themselves.
Right.
So if everybody's worried about I don't want to embarrass myself, then they're not going to be thinking about you.
Right.
You know, they're thinking about themselves. So
Right.
it's not really that big a deal. And like I feel like with time, everything, like people can get over a lot or forget a lot with time.
That's really good. Yeah. So what else? What are some other things that kind of came to your mind as far as maybe if we said taking a perspective, but also how do we overcome some of those fears or that tendency to like be over emotional?
I think something that I've noticed with like myself and my peers is that people don't want to feel uncomfortable. They don't want to, do things outside of their comfort zone. And I feel like a lot of times those things that make you uncomfortable, those things that are out of your comfort zone, is what leads you to grow the most.
Yeah.
You want to expand your comfort zone, right? And so I think recognizing that and then seeking out tasks that are going to be difficult and challenging, but with the mindset of this is going to help me grow and this is going to be good for me in the long term. This is going to help me get better a little bit every day, which then, big picture, long term, a little bit better every day is going to really add up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So say I want to grow, but I am super scared of getting out of my comfort zone. What are some things that you would recommend that I do?
Get it to like starting that process. I think having a defined reason as to why you want to grow. So you want to have, obviously goals are very important. Goals that, I don't know if you've heard of the SMART acronym, specific, measurable, what is it,
attainable, reasonable, and time bound.
Yes.
Yeah.
So having good goals is very important, but also having a defined reason as to why you want to achieve your goals.
Motivation.
Obviously, part of growing outside of your comfort zone is going to require discipline, and to grow discipline, the first thing you have to do is decide that you actually want to be disciplined. But you need to have develop a reason for why you want to achieve those goals to help keep you motivated and to stick to your plan. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's super easy to make a plan of how you want to achieve your goals, and then it's really easy to stick to it when things are going well, things are going smoothly, but when stuff starts to get difficult, that's when you're going to want to quit. So having a defined why to help push you past that point of where you want to quit.
That's really, really good. So give us an example, because a little bit about Lucas. Lucas has struggled with anxiety. And when you came into freshman year, you had a lot of social anxiety. You're afraid what are people going to think about you. Performance anxiety, worried about school. And your arc of growth from freshman year all the way to graduation has been awesome. You've actually done the things that you're talking about. So give us one of the examples that you might use to encourage another young person kind of saying, oh yeah, but that worked for him, but that can't really work for me.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up. My freshman and sophomore year of high school, I had a ton of like perfectionist kind of tendencies and social anxiety and what are people going to think about me, and like it was ridiculous. And one thing that kind of helped was COVID in a way, because I was no longer, in front of all of these people all the time. So it really kind of helped me take a step back. It kind of forced me to pause and think about, okay, what is actually important? What kind of relationships actually matter and are worth putting time into, and what are just kind of like acquaintances in school. Help me really prioritize and work on myself. And another thing that came out of that, working on myself, was realizing that it's okay to be different. Like, you don't want to, like, I was trying to fit myself inside of other people's box as to what I should be,
what their expectations were,
right, to fit into other people's expectations. So over that time period, I was able to be okay with not fitting in other people's box, and then I was able to do what I felt was important to me to help me grow, and just recognizing that it's okay to feel like you don't fit in. It's okay to be different, because again, talking about perspective, all of those things are temporary, right? So like high school, in the moment you think it's a big deal, right? And high school's super important, and that's like the center of the world. But I've had a little bit of a difficulty fitting into that box, right? But I've realized that that's only temporary, I'm in the Army. I'm about to go to basic training and stuff, and I know that my whole world is going to change and open up after that experience. And then there's college. You're going to be meeting all kinds of new people. So many more opportunities are going to be available. So with time, you're gonna figure out where you fit in the best. So
yeah, that's awesome. So those people that are 13, 14, 15, it feels like high school's overwhelming and it's such a big deal what people think about me today, just to remember this isn't forever, and you be you be who you are, and grow in confidence in who you are as a person.
Absolutely. That's
really, really good. Another thing that you had said, kind of tying into all this, that stuck with me, was taking the first step. You were talking about how, for example, if you want to get healthy and you think, it's this really big maybe unattainable goal, your perspective is wide,
Mm-hmm.
but that makes today really, really hard. But sometimes it's just about taking the first step to do that thing.
Right. Yeah, just getting your foot in the door is the most difficult part. Like, there'll be days where, like, I don't want to go work out. I just want to sleep in, just hang out, lay around. And it's really hard to get there. But I know that once I show up, I'm just going to get into my routine and do what I have to do, I think it's also important to, if you can find other people that can help, like, keep you accountable, or that you can talk to when you're not really feeling it, to help push you to take that first step. But once you take that first step and you start getting into it, it becomes a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And once it becomes a habit, it's much easier to maintain because it's just part of your day. Like starting to work out for the first time is going to be super difficult because it's not part of your routine. But once you start to do that more regularly and you have a plan, then it just becomes part of your day. It's part of your routine, and so it's much easier to stick to.
Yeah. Awesome. So to recap, we're saying that we want to try to look at big picture perspectives, big picture of your life, big picture other people. We want to make a plan. We want to determine what's our motivation for the change that we want to make in our life. We want to overcome the fear of being uncomfortable and to say, all right, what is uncomfortable is what is going to help me grow. And then once we kind of have all that down, it's just take that first step. You grow in that, and then the next day you take the next step after that, and you're on your way.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is advocate for yourself and your own growth.
That's good.
Don't let other people hold you back from what you know that you need to do. An example I could think of is I recently went on a 8-day backpacking trip in the Smokies by myself. And before, when I was telling my friends about it, like, hey, I'm going to go on this backpacking trip, people were like, oh, that sounds awesome. That's so cool. I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to come? That'd be great. And there's people like, I don't know about that. Like,
right.
We're hesitant once I'm like, okay, let's put it on the calendar, like, let's buy some, buy plane tickets and stuff. Like, people were much more hesitant. And I could have said, well, I don't want to go by myself, so I'm just not going to go at all, But I was like, well, I would love to go with somebody, but I would rather go by myself than not at all. So being able to be independent in that, it's important to have other people around you and to do these things. That's awesome, but don't let not having somebody hold you back from what you need to do to grow yourself.
That's really good. From who you want to be.
Because
again, this is temporary.
Right.
That's really, really good. Well, thanks so much, Lucas, for your thoughts.
Of course.
Really appreciate you doing this.
No problem.